Welcome to the Life You Love podcast.
We're your hosts, Grace Lemire
and Erin Convertini.
This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers.
For the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to.
We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love. We're getting a little vulnerable today and sharing some of the life lessons we've learned the hard way over the last few years. These are insights that came from our real experiences, mistakes, and moments that force us to grow whether we wanted to or not. These lessons have all fundamentally changed how we approach life and building the future we want, and we hope that they do the same for you.
I love these types of episodes. We were just saying we love the big sister advice type of episode. We did one a couple months ago that was three harsh truths. We were just saying we also can't talk today that you need to hear in your 20s, and you guys ate that one up, which that was one of my favorite episodes too. But today's episode is just going to be okay, your excuses are boring, start taking action, what you want to do, just literally go after it kind of episode, which is really fun. We all need to hear that sometimes.
Yeah, I think some of these are somewhat harsh truths, but I love those. As a consumer and as a listener of other podcasts and YouTube videos and things, I love when people tell me the things they had to learn the hard way, or they give me the real big sister advice that maybe I didn't really want to hear, but I needed to hear, because thanks, sister, you just saved me energy, time, probably money, and now I don't have to go through it like the hard way myself, now I have that list.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think about it as, when you go to a Pilates class or a yoga class, and sometimes the instructor is like, you came here for a reason, try harder. If you want to fall out of this exercise, just don't, just have a better mindset, like that kind of thing. Or up your weights. But then the other instructor will be like, it's okay, take what you need, take some rest, just sit in a child's pose. Yeah, we're not going to be doing that today. It depends. I feel like it depends on what type of coaching style you like, but I know I'm the same way as you, Grace, where I want to listen to a podcast where someone's going to say your excuses are boring. Let's just go get shit done.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to get into the points. I think we should get into point one. This is such a personal lesson. I loved this one. I added this one onto the Notion, but I think it's obviously so relevant for both of us. But the first life lesson that I feel like I learned the hard way is you can't expect a seed to thrive where the soil is not rich. And sounds so bad, guys. I heard something along the lines of this at church a month ago, but you can take the religion out of it. Obviously, it's not a religious statement, but basically it's this idea of, if you really want something to enter your life, you have to make sure that where that thing is entering, the soil is rich, that it's going to grow. For example, if you want your dream partner, are you equipped to handle that type of relationship, right? I'll use myself as an example because this was how I learned this lesson. I think I've talked about this before, but I used to have a very bad anxious attachment style. If you have an anxious attachment style, or if you've been with someone who has one, we spiral when someone gets distant. I would lose my mind if I was really into someone and I didn't feel like it was reciprocated. It was awful. Why on earth in that situation would I expect my dream partner, because my dream partner is someone who is very secure in themselves. They're not doing all the games. They're not anxious. They're not worrying about if I want to go on a girls trip. They're not like, oh, what are you doing? Da, da, da. You know what I mean? Why would I expect that person to enter my life when the soil is not rich enough to make a relationship like that thrive? And same thing with your finances. If you want to make more money, are you doing the things right now to where if that money showed up at your doorstep, you got a job that was paying you the desired salary that you want, would you have the habits and routines to be able to manage that amount of money effectively? Or are you not caring right now? You're not putting effort into it, or you're not getting yourself to a point where the soil is rich enough to have the seed planted in your life that you want. And it sucks because I think, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way, because I'm not saying that this isn't true necessarily, I think, for everything. For example, health stuff I'm dealing with. I want to be healthy. Am I doing the things I need to do to get healthy? Yes. But is this a situation where I'm magically going to get cured when my routines and I'm taking my supplements 100% of the time for one day? No, you know what I mean? It's not true necessarily for everything. It's true in different ways. But I do think you have to make sure that you're doing the things that you should be doing that show that you're ready for the next level.
Yeah, this is so prevalent in dating, and it's not even so much, well, everything you said is true with like you need to cure your anxious attachment style if that's something that you're struggling with and you're expecting your partner not to have that. But I think it goes even deeper than that with the qualities that you have as a person and what you're
Mm-hmm.
expecting of your partner as well. For example, if you made a list of every single thing you want your partner to have, and you're saying you want your partner to have really good exercise habits and eating habits, and they are very career oriented and like X, Y, and Z, whatever that thing may be. And you're having that expectation of your partner, but you yourself don't live up to that. How are you calling in your dream partner who has all of those things? And like you said, it's not a situation where you're going to fix three things on the checklist and all of a sudden your dream partner comes in. But what you're doing is you're like loving yourself and you're loving your habits, the habits that you're expecting of your dream partner, so that eventually down the line, when your dream partner comes in, you're able to handle that. I heard this a while ago and this really stuck with me, but someone said, if it's not a priority now, it won't be a priority when you have more. And that really stuck with me. So, for example, if you are finding yourself always buying new clothes, it's one thing to always be buying new clothes because you love fashion, you're always wearing something super stylish, clothes are a hobby of yours, you love going out to dinner with your friends and you're always wearing something cute and you buy new clothes because it's something you generally love, versus you saying, okay, I'm going to buy new clothes because when I have X, Y, and Z new things, then I will have what I need to have a cute wardrobe and look stylish all the time and look put together all the time. If it's not a priority now, if you don't currently wear the clothes that are in your closet and try to make outfits based on what you currently have, it's not going to be a priority when you have more. Or another example of this is, before I lived in Nashville, when I was back in Pittsburgh, I had a pretty small one-bedroom apartment and my desk was in my living room. Basically, my whole office like took over my living room. I didn't even have a TV out there. And I would always use the excuse that my space was too small to keep it clean. Like that apartment was always a disaster. But really, it was just me not having good habits around keeping my apartment clean. So then I moved into a two-bedroom apartment to fix that problem. And do you think that I kept that two-bedroom apartment clean? No, because if it's not a priority now, it's not going to be a priority when you have more.
And I think that's the going back to the whole like overarching statement is like, it's don't expect the seed to thrive if the soil is not rich enough for it to thrive. You can still want the higher income, the bigger apartment, the whatever, but just know that if you're not actively trying wherever you are right now to figure out how to best manage what you have and to make the soil rich, make your routines, your habits, your relationships, your mindset, your confidence really, really solid and strong. When that seed gets planted in your life, it might still get planted in your life, but it might be even harder for you to manage than you're expecting. It's so it's just very real, to be honest. I feel like it sounds like kind of harsh, but if you are struggling to manage or you're not following through with managing your income right now, when you have more income, it's going to get more difficult because now you're making more decisions about where that money is going. Or if you aren't taking care of your apartment, like you said, and you want to buy a house, that's amazing, right? Go ahead and buy a house. Yeah, buy a house. But then when your apartment is, or when your house is disorganized, don't be surprised. That's the kicker here. Don't be surprised. Or if I was able to heal my anxious attachment style through years of therapy, very worth it, but years, okay? Don't believe anyone who says that they just like healed overnight from something because it's not true. But I feel like if I hadn't worked on that, and my dream partner showed up at my door, Lord have mercy, it would have been a mess. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like my dream partner would have been sick of me because he's like, girl, you're losing your mind over things that are like, why are you losing your mind? Or this is ridiculous, right? And that's fine. But I couldn't sit there and be like, oh, I didn't expect this. Because, girl, like if I hadn't healed my attachment style, I would look back at myself and be like, you didn't even try. What do you mean? You weren't working on this. So why are you surprised that you now can't handle that relationship, can't handle the higher income, you can't handle the whatever? So it's much better to focus on making the soil rich now. So it's like, okay, I want to make sure that I am keeping my apartment clean. It's not even just like being more disciplined or muscling your way through it. Yes, that's part of it, maybe, but how can I create systems for myself? And we should do an episode on why systems are more important than your goals. But how can I create systems that allow me to manage these things better and to keep the soil rich in all these areas of my life? Okay, I want to have a good social life. How am I creating a system for myself to where I'm hanging out with my friends, but then I also have nights that I'm spending alone, nurturing my introverted self, so that when my life gets busier, I'm still able to manage my social life and my personal time. Or when I have a relationship, I'm now, because my soil is so rich in terms of my social life and my community, I'm able to manage that and a relationship. Or how am I creating a system for tracking my spending for myself every week so that when I'm making more, or when I take on a side hustle, or when I have another income stream, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do this. That seed was planted in my life. I got a new opportunity and I'm cool. I can manage it just fine.
Yeah, this is so prevalent in honestly every area of your life. And you don't realize how the areas kind of overlap because when we were talking about dating, that made me remember that. So I'm obviously in a relationship. I have been for the past year. And I figured out my like disorganized life probably 2 years ago, like at the end of 2023, right? Like again, before that, could never keep my apartment clean, lived in a constant state of like disaster. It was really bad. I was anxious all the time. And then I fixed that. And now, like, I'm very good at keeping my apartment organized. My one friend is really good she's very OCD. And she was staying at my apartment last weekend and she was like, Erin, you have done a total 180. You have such good habits around like keeping your apartment clean. But where I'm getting with this is my boyfriend is so OCD. He's like super OCD, like not in like a bad way or anything, but like his apartment is spotless, right? What would have happened if I would have met him 2 years ago when my apartment was a mess all the time? He would have been like, you're a mess. Like, I can't date you. Like, we're going to cohabitate one day and your apartment is disgusting all the time. So you don't understand how the areas kind of like overflow as well. And when you're not taking care of one area of your life, that seed can't thrive in the other. But the other one that we were talking about, obviously, is money. And this is so prevalent too, because I feel like I hear people say so often, like, I will start saving money when I increase my income, or I can't save money now because my income isn't high enough. And obviously, the more money that you have, the easier it can be to save money. However, I think that's a really bad mindset because, like you said, Grace, the more income you have, the more complex your financial situation is. And if you don't build the habit of one, tracking your spending to understand exactly where your money's going, budgeting, so making sure that your fixed expenses aren't too high in comparison to your income when your income is lower, and then getting into the habit of physically transferring money into your savings account and your investment account every month. Whenever you increase your income, even if your income doubles overnight, do you think that you're all of a sudden going to start transferring money into your savings account or transferring money into your investment account? No. The other half of that is using the opportunity when your income is lower to learn about money through reading books, listening to some podcasts, like becoming financially literate so that when your income increases, you're equipped to invest more and pay off your debt and hit those big financial goals because you became financially literate before your income increased.
Absolutely. And I think, again, going back like to what we were saying at the beginning, the main point of this section is it's don't expect a seed to thrive where the soil isn't rich enough. If you operate under the, okay, yeah, I want this seed to be planted in my life, but I just want to be ignorance is bliss and just know that when it gets planted, it's going to be crazy. Okay, fine. Do your thing, girl. You know what I mean? Like if you know you can't keep up with your space right now, you're struggling to keep up with your space or your routines or whatever, and you're like, yeah, but I still want a house, and I just know that when I get a house, it's going to be a disaster to keep clean because I can't keep my apartment clean. That's totally fine, right? Like you can choose to operate under the whole like ignorance is bliss, like I'll just whatever, keep my expectations low, whatever. But I have found that in my own life, when I actually deal with the things I feel like need to be dealt with, or I try to focus on the systems, I try to, yeah, just work on the things, develop the systems and routines for myself to where it makes the soil richer. Not only do I feel better in the moment, but then when new things come into my life, I handle it better. Going back to the dating like example, anxious attachment, like when I was dating, when I had an anxious attachment style, I wouldn't say disaster, but not great, right? So then I work on it. I heal the anxious attachment style. I'm not really like actively dating at this moment in time. It's just not a priority to me. But when I first moved down here, or a little bit after I moved down here because I was seeing someone prior, but I went on dates. And the way that I was able to navigate those was with so much less stress, so much like no anxiety. I'm like, yeah, like if I reject them, if they reject me, no big deal. As where those are things I would have been so like, ghosted once before I'd be like, why'd he ghost me? Should I double text him? Da da da. I was like, see ya. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. But it's because I spent the time making sure the soil was rich that when I made the decision to do that again, it made sense. Or it was able to thrive. Another example from years in my past, I used to go to the gym all the time. I was like a super big gym girl, always lifting, whatever. And it became a big part of my life. But then it got to a point where I was unhealthy because I became consumed with body image and started like really being concerned about every single thing that was going into my mouth. And just, this was like the 2017, 2018 era where like there was like Pinterest diets and like, what I'm talking about. It's crazy era. I took time away from the gym to heal those things so that when I wanted to go back into going to the gym, go back into exercise, that seed could re enter my life and actually thrive because my mindset was not in a good place where going to the gym, it was just unhealthy. So I genuinely think that trying to address the problems and work on the things that are going on in your life makes a whole lot more sense because it makes your life more enjoyable now. But then it also means that when that thing that you want actually comes into your life, you're better able to kind of field it. But I feel like we've yapped so much about
Yeah, let's move
number
on to
one.
number
I'm
2.
like, number two. Number two is stop being afraid of what happens if you do and start being afraid of what happens if you don't. I also heard this a few weeks ago, but it just perfectly phrased like something that I've felt for so long. I didn't have the words for it. So don't take this as me being like, I learned this lesson literally a few days ago, whatever. But it perfectly phrased something that I felt. I think I've talked about this book before on the podcast. It's called 30 Lessons for Living. I think everyone should read it. It's great. It's a study of like elderly people. They asked for their life advice. And what you end up kind of finding throughout the book, this doesn't spoil it, but people tend to regret what they didn't do far more than they regret what they did do. And there's actually studies on this that, you want to like muster up the courage to go approach someone in public, or you want to go for a job opportunity or quit your job and pursue your business full time or whatever. When you do it, it seems so scary, right? But then afterwards, you're like, oh, you know what I mean? I think I talked about this on the podcast. I gave someone my number on a napkin like a month ago, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so excited! Yeah, hell yeah, I'm so
This is
down."
a
Whatever.
crazy story.
It's so funny. Yeah. He was like, "Oh, I'm so down." Like wanted my number, whatever. He never texted me. You know what I mean? And the thing is it's like, do I regret doing that at all? No. It's not that deep. You know what I mean? In
Yeah.
the moment, it seems like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But then afterwards, I'm like, I don't regret actually doing that at all. But
No, because
people
if you would
tend
have left the restaurant and didn't do it, you would have regretted it.
Exactly. But it's like people, statistically speaking, people tend to regret what they did not do far more than they regret what they did do. Think about the things in the moment that you were like, oh, that was embarrassing, or that was dumb, or like, I really had to put myself out there. That was nerve wracking, whatever. You probably don't actually think about those things as much as you thought you would in the moment. You probably don't regret that you did them, but you probably sit here right now and you regret that you didn't start sooner on your business, that you didn't shoot your shot with someone that you thought was cute or whatever it may be. You probably regret that you didn't start going to the gym sooner, that you didn't eat healthier sooner, that you didn't see a doctor sooner, that you, didn't start the business, whatever it is. Like, so instead of being afraid of like what happens if you do, like, oh, will people judge me? Will this guy, be weirded out that I'm giving him my number on a napkin? Will like, like whatever. Start being afraid of what happens if you don't. What if I don't quit my job and go after my business? Am I going to end up being 55 and being like, oh shoot, I wish I did that? Or if I don't give my number to this guy, and this is just a stupid example, but like this again,
Yeah.
this is irrelevant. Not irrelevant, but it's just there's obviously bigger fish to fry than giving your number to him. You know
That
what
could
I
have been
mean?
your husband. Who
It could have
knows?
been. It could have been.
Yeah,
You know what?
exactly.
And it's
Yep. If
not,
my
but
boyfriend
it's fine.
would have never walked up to me at the Pirates game, we wouldn't be dating now. Yeah,
Right.
I totally agree. I think when it comes to not taking action, and we actually just posted an entire episode on 3 strategies for taking more action. And I really like that episode. So definitely go back and listen if you haven't
Yeah.
already. But I think one big kind of blocker here is people just wanting a lot of certainty on the outcome before deciding to take action. And the truth is that you're never going to have 100% certainty ever. Best case scenario is that you have like 70 or 80% certainty. But who was the author that was talking about the type 1 and the type 2 decisions? I feel like we've talked
Oh,
about this on the podcast
we
before.
have, but you brought it up. You brought it up like it was a book you read, and I can
Yeah,
never
I
remember
think
what book it
I
is
can't
either.
remember. Yeah, but essentially, like type 1 decisions are non-reversible decisions. So, like you make the decision, you break up with your boyfriend, he blocks you, you can never talk to him again. Like that, maybe that's a type 1 decision. Type 2 decisions are reversible. So, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but you get the point. It's something like 80 to 90% of decisions are type 2 decisions, which means you do something, it doesn't work out, move on with your life. Like it's reversible generally. So, best case scenario, you have that 70 to 80% certainty. But this author, who I'm blanking on right now, says that you should only wait until you have 51% certainty to take action on a type 2 decision. And this is something that you say all the time, Grace, which is to think about what's the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and the most likely scenario when you're thinking through making a decision. Because a lot of people will sit here and say, well, I don't have that certainty. What if I feel embarrassed? What if I feel dumb? What if the guy doesn't text me back when I give him my number on a napkin? What if, like, what if? But if you sit there and run that exercise of, okay, best case scenario that I quit my job to be self-employed is that it works out and I make a lot of money and I'm super fulfilled. Worst case scenario is that it doesn't work out and I have to go get another job and I'm right back where I started. And most likely outcome is that it works out and you do just fine. So, yeah, just run through that exercise because you're never going to have certainty. But the more actions that you take, the closer you'll be to where you want to go.
Absolutely. I Googled the type 1 and type 2 decisions. It says it was popularized by Jeff Bezos
Oh, okay.
about
Well,
one-way door decisions and two-way door decisions. So I don't know, but I think there's another author that talked about it in a book or something, because I feel like you've mentioned it before. But yeah, that best, worst, and most likely case scenario framework is actually something I learned in therapy a long time ago. And it's actually been such a game changer for me as someone who I used to have pretty severe anxiety and depression. And it was really helpful for me in getting out of my own head and thinking, okay, I don't want to let my anxiety do the talking. I want to give kind of like some data to it. Giving numbers and like on paper kind of facts and figures has always been really helpful for me in kind of quieting my anxiety, where it's like, okay, again, when we're thinking about making these big jumps into things and we're worried about, like, we're having feelings of what could happen, your brain's job's to keep you safe. So your brain will naturally try to basically catastrophize the worst case scenario to keep you safe, because it views this new thing that might be a little uncomfortable or something that takes courage as something that's a threat to your body. And so when you actually write down what is the best, worst, and most likely case scenario, you're actually, what you'll find most of the time, not to spoil it for anyone, but what you'll find is the worst case scenario, like the absolute worst, when you just let your brain catastrophize, it's actually usually not that bad. And B, it's usually something that you would have to go down, like downhill so fast and so many times for it to actually be true. And then when you actually play around with the best case scenario, you tend to realize it's actually not as far off as you think it is. And the most likely case scenario is usually somewhere in between, where it's like, okay, yeah, I want to start a business. Worst case scenario is it absolutely fails. I run through every single dollar that I own. I literally end up experiencing homelessness. I lose my house. I lose my car. I lose my relationships. I lose everything. Right. And when you actually say that out loud, you're like, hold on a sec. That's kind of dumb now that I've said that out loud. You're like, wait a second. Okay. And then you go, best case scenario is it works out. I love my job. I'm so fulfilled. I make so much money. I reach all these people. I make an impact, da, da, da. Most likely case scenario is I have some months that I'm really good on revenue. Some months I'm not. Some months I'm like, what the heck am I doing? But overall, I'm like, this is worth it to me. I love this. It ends up working. And then run yourself through what would need to happen for the worst case scenario to happen, right? Going back to that example, you losing everything. There are a million things that would have to happen before you get to that point. Because if you're listening to this podcast, you're smart and you're capable, because people who are just like dumb and incapable are not out here like listening to podcasts about how to change their life. Like, I'm sorry. Okay. So it's like, if you're listening to this, right? Okay. Month one, maybe you realize, okay, I didn't make as much revenue as I would have wanted. Okay. Month two, I didn't make as much revenue as I would have. Okay. All right. For the smart and capable people, they're like, ding, ding, ding. Okay. I need to figure this out. I need to figure out how to make more revenue. Okay, month three happens. Let's say you don't make as much revenue, but you're still in the green overall. Okay, again, now I need to really kick it into high gear. Maybe you take on a side hustle. You get another, you start Instacart, or you work as a barista, or you're like, you know what? I really don't want to take on this client right now, but I'm going to, because it's going to get me back to a point where I feel good about my profit margins. Okay, if month four comes along and it's still going down south. Okay, we're 4 months in and you're nowhere near losing your house and experiencing homelessness and losing your car and losing your relationships. You know what I mean? Like, so then when you really think about every single thing, okay, let's say you don't make any money. You're like, all right, here we go. Now my side hustle is not covering everything. What's the next step? I'm going to start selling things in my apartment. Okay, that is so far off. You know what I mean? There's a million things that would actually have to happen between where you're at and ending up at actual rock bottom. And I think that you're smart enough to pivot in this example, right? With business stuff. I understand things can fall apart quickly when, whatever, won't get into that. But I think running through that starts to really put you in this space where you're like, okay, I'm actually afraid of what happens if I don't do this. And I will also add too, before we go on to the third one, because I feel like I need to shut up on point two, but I think it's helpful sometimes to ask yourself. So do like a visualization meditation, or even just talk to yourself out loud, or do I think they call it like dream day journaling. You like journal about what your dream day in the life would look like, whatever. Write all of that down, do the meditation, talk about it to yourself, whatever. And then ask yourself, like, by not going after this thing, what am I sacrificing, or what am I choosing to give up by staying where I am? By staying in the place that feels safe, what am I giving up? I was asked this a few years ago, and it made me realize, okay, by not going after what I want, I'm giving up the potential for more freedom, the potential for more money, the potential for more fulfillment, the potential for happiness, the potential for the success, all of these things. And then you have to ask yourself if sacrificing all of those things is worth whatever's making you stay where you are. And a lot of times what's making you stay where you are is comfort, right? So like, and then when you really think about it, okay, me sacrificing 5 minutes of comfort to give my friend ended up giving the napkin to this random man. I didn't, because I was like nervous. But even if I did, right, give it the 5 minutes of discomfort to go give my number to this man. He could possibly be my husband. He's not, because he didn't text me, which is crazy. But because I'm just like, if I would have been flattered, like if I was him, I would have been like, she's so cool and fun and cute. Yeah, I'd be hyped. But anyways, but it's like, can I sacrifice those 5 minutes of comfort for the potential of what this is? Because if I sacrifice the 5 minutes of comfort and I trade it for 5 minutes of discomfort, what if it just unlocked all the things that I'm potentially giving up? Well, now I'm going to have no regrets, And even now, I don't regret the 5 minutes of discomfort that it was, even though it didn't lead to anything.
Yeah, you're definitely giving up the comfort. I think the other two, very quickly before we move on to number three, are you're afraid of feeling embarrassed. And to that, I say, like, you have to just get over it. You're going to feel embarrassed. If I can count how many times I have felt embarrassed over the last 3 years growing my TikTok account and building in public and posting videos when I had no idea what I was doing and my video quality was terrible and I sounded uncomfortable in front of the camera because I was uncomfortable in front of the camera. And now I'm going through that again, building up my YouTube channel from scratch in 2025. The number of times that I have felt embarrassed are literally infinite, but you just have to push through it. There's one creator that I follow, her name's Sarah Boss.
I was just gonna say,
yeah, she talks about how embarrassment is a waste of an emotion. And I love that. Just remember that the next time you're afraid of something because you don't want to feel embarrassed. And then the other one is people get afraid of wasting time. And to that, I say you're literally wasting time when you're not taking action. Like the time is going to pass regardless. And if you spend 25 hours on a project that never ends up going anywhere because you pivot and do something else, you learned a lot of things in those 25 hours, even if it doesn't give you the end result that you thought it was going to upfront. So don't be afraid to be embarrassed and don't be afraid to waste time. But with that, let's get to number three, because I love number three. And this is something that I always have to remind myself, which is that growth happens in seasons, not continuously. And if you have this mindset that growth is going to happen all the time, you're going to put yourself into a standard that isn't realistic and you're going to be really hard on yourself and be in your head. And then that's going to delay the growth even further. For example, I definitely have talked about this on the podcast before because around like the New Year's time, I was in a very big growth phase. I was like thinking about the product that I'm now launching, but I did most of the work for it like back in the winter. And I was talking on the podcast about how winter is always my most productive season, which like I feel like for a lot of people it's not like that,
Yeah.
but it's always my most productive season work wise. Some other things like I don't socialize, I don't like to leave my house. That's probably why it's the most productive work wise. But it's just I'm so productive. Like it's dark out. All I want to do is like sit on my computer, and I have so many ideas, and I'm like thinking of products and things that I want to do with my business and all of that. And I had a really productive like 3 or 4 months, but this past month has been so slow for me. I've been spending a lot of time on my couch. My boyfriend's deployed right now. I'm like in my sad girl era about it. I'm just like, I honestly haven't been doing much. And I get really in my head about that when I'm having a slower season to where I can't actually relax in the way that my body needs. So that delays my productive season because I need to relax eventually. And if I'm not relaxing right now, I'm going to have to relax next month or the month after that. So literally just take the slow season and enjoy it and then get back to being productive whenever your body tells you to.
Yeah, I feel like the expectations you put on yourself either make or break you. And I was actually just talking to my therapist about this today. I said to her, because I have invested so much time and energy and effort into my own healing, I used to put this expectation on myself of I can say I'm healed, or I will be happier, or I will have met this bar for myself when I am no longer anxious, or like ever, or when I never crash out ever, or when I never have a day where I'm just like, super consumed with self-doubt or whatever. And I used to think that that was when I would hit this level of healing. So then I would get upset with myself being like, well, you've put all this effort in, and have you even really made progress because you just had an anxious day today, or you were just consumed with self-doubt, or something threatened your financial security and now you're spiraling and whatever. But then I said to my therapist today, I'm like, if someone was sad 24/7, we would say they're depressed, right? Like there would be a clinical diagnosis probably of depression. Obviously, I'm not like a psychologist, so I can't diagnose anybody with none, but we would be concerned, right? People would be like, hey, are you okay? Like you're sad 24/7, like you might have depression, whatever, you should get some help. If I was happy, like happy go lucky, high on life 24/7, that would be very weird. You know what I mean? I feel like that would be actually, if I was just like, guys, every 20, like people would be like, are you good?
It's not realistic.
It'd be weird. People would think I am ill. So I'm like, if I cannot expect myself to never have a quote unquote negative emotion. I don't think it's necessarily negative to feel sad or anxious, but like, if I put that expectation on myself, I'm going to get so frustrated because I feel like I'm never, ever making progress. And this is why I think we talked about this in our New Year, New Goals episode. I don't set a lot of numeric goals for myself. I focus on systems more because when I set numeric goals for myself, you don't quote unquote win until you hit that metric. And it's easy to get into that mindset of, okay, I want to make, throwing out random numbers. Let's say I want to make $100,000. If I am halfway through the year and I've made 40,000, I'm quote unquote behind. Now I'm upset because I'm not meeting these expectations that I set for myself. What's the point in that, right? What's the point of setting the goal for yourself is to make more money, right? Or I want to go to the gym 5 times a week. Just because you went 4 times one week because you were sick one day does not mean you failed. The point of setting the goal of 5 times a week is because your goal, the root of it, was to go to the gym more, or to be healthier, or to build muscle. Just because you didn't meet that arbitrary metric doesn't mean that you aren't making progress, that you failed. So I think sometimes I have to realize that when it comes to healing or business growth or whatever, you're not going to be happy 24/7. You're not going to be growing 24/7. You're not going to be healing. Like healing's not linear, growth's not linear. And I used to hear people say that, and the growth isn't linear. I'd be like, shut up. Like, I don't want to hear it again. You know what I mean? But it's so true. And when it really clicks in your brain of like, if I set that expectation for myself for it to be linear, I'm going to end up in this cycle of disappointment where I'm constantly feeling like I'm not meeting my own expectations. What's the point? Don't change the expectations, release the expectations from yourself, and allow yourself to grow in the way that feels appropriate, that feels best. And it's not going to be linear.
Yeah, we have definitely talked about this in our goal setting episodes, but Grace and I goal set very differently because I do really like numeric goals. I always set like revenue goals for myself. I set just like they're always very numeric, but I do take the mindset of the growth is not linear. So let's say my revenue goal was $100,000. If I'm halfway through the year and I'm not halfway to my goal, I don't get down on myself because I know that growth is not linear. And the other part of setting numeric goals, this is like a little bit of a tangent, but I tend to set numeric goals that are a lot higher than not that I think that I'm capable of achieving. I set them I set them high because if I fall short, it's still higher than I originally would have set them. Where this comes from is I read the book The 10X Rule about 6 months ago, and the entire premise of the book was that if you, let's say you made $100,000 last year and you set a goal to make $150,000 this year, that's such a marginal change. Yes, it's more, but it's such a marginal change that in your mind, not much has to change in order for you to hit that goal. Maybe you need to take on one more client. Maybe you need to, whatever you do, you need to do something, a small little shift to increase your revenue like that. But systematically, your habits, your day to day, your business model does not have to change in order to hit that goal. But if you made $100,000 and you said, I want to make $1 million this year, that's going to force your mind to run the exercise of what would it actually look like if my business made $1 million instead of $100,000 this year. That's going to force you to expand your mind into what's possible, different revenue streams, different opportunities to say, what would it take to make $1 million? So I always set my revenue goals super high because of that. And like, am I going to make $1 million this year? No. Did I put that on my vision board? Yeah.
You don't know, girl. You might. Okay. Don't take yourself out the running. You don't know.
But that did a lot for me at the beginning of the year when I was having a super productive time to look at all of my options and say, what would it look like if I did make $1 million? And the other point of this whole like growth isn't linear aspect is that I really like the idea of a very short sprint season, and that timeline can look different for everybody. I know you do the 12-week year. I kind of like to break that out even further, and I really like to goal set monthly. I watched a TikTok video the other day. I forget who the creator was, but she was saying, she was like, what would happen if you dialed in and focused on one thing for 30 days? Like if you had a product that you wanted to launch, you could launch it in 30 days. If that was your sole focus, if you wanted to start a TikTok account in 30 days, you could have 10,000 followers in 30 days if that was your sole focus and you really dialed in. So I really like that. Do a short sprint, grow, and then just nurture, because you're going to accomplish so much more in 30 days than you would if you were like, well, at some point this year, I would really like to start my TikTok account and I'll post here and there and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I've been so much more focused and productive doing the 12-week year because, and this goes back to decision fatigue, which we have an episode on as well. But if you are trying to manage multiple things in your mind at the same time, it's going to be very difficult to give a lot of like focused attention and energy to something. So it's much better to just be like, okay, what do I want to focus on right now? And orienting around that. I also do want to say with this too, that I think we have an episode that talks about comparison somewhere. We've covered so many topics that I feel like we probably have one somewhere on the podcast, but growth is going back to the expectations you set for yourself and expecting growth to be linear. You've got to get yourself out of the mindset of comparison when it comes to growth, because everyone's timeline for growth is so different. I have a friend who started her content creation page after me, and she now has I helped her figure out how to get started with UGC, and that was one of our price her brand deals and things in the beginning of content creation. And she now has more followers and makes more money than I do, right? And hell yeah, right, you go girl, I'm very happy for her. There's no jealousy, whatever, but it would be easy for me to get into a place of comparison and being well, she started after me, but now she's doing more than me. Da, 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 da. Boo freaking who, you know what I mean? You're two different people on your own journeys, and there's reasons that things unfold in the way they unfold. And putting your energy into comparison is frankly a waste of energy. Why are you spending time doing that? But also the thing I will say, and I heard this from Amanda Francis, I don't know if it was in her book. Her book's called Riches, Fuck. I don't want to cuss on the podcast and get it taken down, but her book is so good. I think everyone should read it. But she also, I don't know if it was in the book or somewhere else, but she basically says life is not a zero-sum game. And something about that, I was just wow, that just changed my perspective. Just because somebody else has, followers or whatever, does not mean that you can't have followers. Just because somebody sells their budget template and makes money does not mean I can't sell my budget template and make money. People will buy one person's budget template. They might not like it. They'll buy somebody else's. It doesn't work for them. They buy a new, or maybe that there's just different people, right? Someone who buys Erin's might be a different person who buys mine. That doesn't mean that Erin sucks because she sells a budget template and my budget template sucks because Erin's sells it. You know what I mean? There doesn't have to be some sort of like bigger meaning to it, right? Like it's just, we both sell products and it's fine because different people buy our products. Money is not a zero sum game. Just because somebody buys something from me doesn't mean that someone's like, now someone's not going to go, that same person isn't going to go buy something from somebody else. It's not I have this, so then you can't, or that person has it, so I can't. So you've got to get yourself out of that mindset too of viewing life as a zero sum game if that's where you're at, because then you're going to view your growth under such a microscope and everybody else's growth under such a microscope and from a lens of comparison, rather than being your authentic self and progressing and growing at the pace that feels right for you and authentic to you and your journey and your purpose. And I think then it just creates these unrealistic expectations again that make you feel like your growth should be linear and that every season should be growth because that's what you feel like you're seeing that from everybody around you, when that's not really the case.
And it also gives you such a higher chance of giving up right before it starts working. I have another example of a friend who, same thing, she saw me starting to post on TikTok. I think I had maybe over 100,000 followers on TikTok before she even started. And I helped her get started. I like gave her tips. For about a year, she was posting consistently and was not growing. And I think she was getting a little bit frustrated. I mean, she would not mind if I was telling this story, by the way. I think she was getting a little bit frustrated because I grew so quickly. I think I grew to 100,000 followers in a couple of months, and she was over a year in and wasn't even at like, I don't know, 20,000. She has more Instagram followers than me right now. It took maybe a year and a couple of months, but then her growth started to take off because everyone's on their own timeline. If she would have got to the 3-month mark and said, well, 3 months in, Erin had 100,000 followers and I only have 15,000 followers, so this isn't going to work for me, I'm going to give up. She's fully self-employed right now. She would never be where she is today. She has a larger Instagram audience than me and a more engaged Instagram audience than me. She's literally crushing it. So yeah, everyone's on their own timeline. And if you're going to fall into comparison, you're not going to give something the chance that it needs to work out. I feel like there's so much that we can say on like growth and goal setting. We have some things in here about like talking about ego and all of that. There's so much that goes into it. So maybe we'll just do an entire episode because we are about out of time. But these types of episodes are so fun. And if you guys have any life lessons that have been really instrumental for you and your growth in your 20s, definitely leave it in Spotify and maybe we can like do a roundup of everybody's answers. I feel like that would be really fun. Or you can DM us on Instagram at The Life You Love Pod. We love hearing from you guys. But thanks for tuning into the podcast and until next week.